Mastering Hybrid Multi-Cloud World, Security and Compliance Reimagined. And for this, I would like to invite Mr. Prashanth Panduranga, who is the CITO at Swiss Re. Giving a brief introduction, Mr. Prashanth is the Chief Information and Transformational Officer and a disruptive thinker with demonstrated success, directing business transformation and recommending IT strategies to large organizations. He has been credited for setting up the world's largest Microsoft private cloud, migrating over 800 plus applications to the cloud, first public cloud implementation in a government sector for New Zealand, first virtualization implementation in a government sector for childcare in US is some of his career highlights. With this, please welcome Mr. Prashanth with a huge round of applause.
I think the last session before one panel session, and then I think we're all waiting for the awards. I don't know if this was by design, but insurance followed by reinsurance. So I'm Prashanth. She already gave the introduction, so I'll skip this. I'm from Swiss Re. It's a reinsurance company, and Kunal, you were asking whether you do India-Pakistan match. We do World Cup, we do Olympics, we do all that as well. So quite a lot of content today has been covered, right? And I'm pretty honored to be here as part of this, to share the stage with some of the excellent speakers. Yeah? So today I'm going to cover very abstract concepts. And are you guys aware of 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗃? So it's a concept where 20 slides in 20 seconds, right? So because we're running out of time, I'll try to do it really fast. So some definitions: hybrid cloud, I think, on-premise, public cloud, that is my definition of hybrid cloud. Multi-cloud, when there is more than one public cloud, and or on-premise, of course. Yeah? Okay, so why do we go to the cloud? Quite a lot of reasons, and a lot of us have, according to the statistics, more than 85% of people are already on the cloud. Are there anybody who are not on the cloud today? None, right? So everybody are on the cloud. Yeah? So now, why and what are the major reasons that we go to the cloud is, transformation or innovation enabler, faster time to market, etc., etc. Without going into the details, the ones that I've highlighted there are some of the reasons why we go hybrid or multi-cloud. Yeah? So, for example, lower risk. Yeah? So, Pushkar just mentioned, right? So that we want to mitigate our risk. We don't want to be with one cloud. Yeah? According to my view, stickiness is not that bad actually, right? You can have stickiness. However, you try to mitigate that risk. You try to lower the risk. For Swiss Re, we are globally based. We operate in China as well. So we are kind of forced to leverage Ali Cloud. We also, our go-to approach was Azure. And then because we adopted a Palantir platform, which is our reporting platform, we also had to leverage AWS. So because of that, we are multi-cloud anyway. Yeah? But a lot of folks actually resolve to adopt multi-cloud primarily because, when you start working with one particular partner, you might not get the benefits that you require completely. Yeah? And hence, you want to diversify that and you adopt that. Business continuity, disaster recovery is one of the main reasons most companies try to start leveraging multi-cloud. Yeah? Because you are in one place, but then you want to obviously have a additional disaster recovery. Yeah? Geographic reach, also quite a lot of companies adopt that because you have the compliance and regulations in different geographical regions. Canada has its policies that you have to have not only the data, but also its application in its geographical location. So how do you implement that? You obviously have to have a similar vendor there, so you start adopting that. The rest of the slides, I'll try to kind of cover a bit of architectural aspects. This is not really recommendations, they're just various different patterns. With this, I also want to just touch upon one thing, right? So Kunal earlier, quite a few of them also spoke about, is cloud architecture different? Yeah. I want to ask you guys one question, right? have you guys implemented cloud? Most of you said yes, right? And have you implemented to the extent that you feel you're taking full advantage of the cloud? How many of you feel I'm taking full absolute advantage of the cloud? One person? Awesome. I like to talk to you about how you take full advantage of the cloud. Right? The reason I ask that question is I personally feel the regular server that I used to have by my leg versus cloud is not the same at all. Right? So hardware and some of the basic things that in principle what cloud is might be the same. Yeah? We are obviously trying to leverage the same capabilities. However, what is really different in the cloud is the capabilities that it brings along, the software capabilities that it is primarily built on top of. I usually refer to cloud as, virtualization as the mother of cloud. Yeah, what do I mean by that? Without virtualization, you would not have had cloud, right? So if you take that notion and kind of try to build on top of it, everything that is cloud is software really. Hardware is actually enabling, but really software is making cloud what cloud is today. Yeah? So it is very different. Yeah? And when you have to adopt a cloud, when you have to implement the architecture for the cloud, the paradigm shift has to happen. Yeah, there is quite a lot of differences in how you implement a cloud architecture. Few years ago, I was called to one of the, like Honeywell as an example. I was consulting and I was called there to talk about cloud. And the department that had called me was the testing department. And they said, okay, we have done testing for Docs Aegis. Now we are implementing cloud. How is it different? Yeah? So if you start thinking that, okay, yeah, cloud is no different. You test an application here, you test an application there. Yeah, right? But the important point is cloud underlies ephemeral. Yeah? It is not consistent. It is not as persistent as your regular server is. It can fail at any time. However, it brings resilience. That's a different thing. Yeah? But it is ephemeral in nature, which means I have to build for that. I have to build assuming that my server will be down at any point in time. That's a different thought paradigm. Right? That's a different thought paradigm. Okay. Some architecture. So let's say I have a user, I making a request, it hits my load balancer. Regular applications are there, multiple databases, let's say. This is legacy architecture. Yeah? Now, from a DR/BCP point of view, how would I change? Like, or how would my architecture look like? Yeah? So I could have a request coming in through the DNS and forward it through the load balancer to an application. Yeah? And then I have a master DB where I store all my data. For my DR purposes, I have a replicated database, I have a slave database, and a few other applications which might not be as heavy put in another data center. This is one kind of architecture. I'm not saying this is ideal architecture, guys, right? So these are examples of paradigms, right? So this could be one of the setup. Now, between the databases, you could have core, yeah, you could have active, you could have primary, or you could have NoSQL databases implemented, quite a lot of different ways to implement it. Now, this is just one of the ways you could implement an architecture, right? Now, a DR doesn't mean replicated database. Yeah, that is not enough, actually. Right? See, when we do a DR/BCP, every single layer that we talk about, right, has to have that replication. Otherwise, your application will not work, essentially. Another way, another different architecture pattern, especially for data protection, some of them implement this. Yeah? So you have your request coming in, it could be to the particular application. You obviously have multiple services. I have used services and application interchangeably in the presentation. Yeah. Now, some of them implemented this way, right? You have your, let's say, cloud data center fronting all the applications. However, you have all of your data stored in your private data center. It's a pattern. Yeah. Is it the best pattern? Not really. But I'm just saying it is one of the patterns that are used. Yeah. Now, this can scale. You could cache. You could actually implement quite a lot of stuff here so that it is faster. However, all of your data is residing in your private data center, so it's a little more secure, obviously. Cloud bursting scenario, lot of different architectural patterns, right? So you have requests coming in, and as you hit your number of requests, you have your threshold set, and you keep spinning up. Yeah? So, and that could be across multiple services, across multiple service instances in one data center versus multiple services instances across multiple data centers as well. Of course, yeah, I've represented it more from a microservices point of view, right? One database per server, but obviously it's just representational. You could have one database and master slave as well. This is another pattern. So, for example, I referred to Canada earlier. Europe has similar rules as well. You will have to replicate your application as well as a local DB. Right? What do? You could, and you have a global application, right? Major enterprises have one global application which you'll have to consume across, and you have to try and keep the best of it. Yeah. So, and most of your application obviously will be relying on a database. Yeah. So then you have a master database. You have a slave database where you store the configuration of this global application. However, for quite a lot of additional locational specific data, you have separate databases residing in the two data centers. So just a few examples of architecture that leads to hybrid or multi-cloud. Now, when you consider hybrid or multi-cloud, yeah? So again, lot of you have given amazing examples. However, a few things from my side, right? When at 𝗕𝘲𝗏 also, when we started the journey to the cloud, you want to prevent shadow IT, right? Because as developers, as geeks, as folks, you always want to try out certain things. Yeah? And if you curb that, you probably will lose out on the amazing skills. But if you don't, then you will not be able to implement. Yeah? So innovation, right? And then compliance. Let me choose which one I want to cover here. Yeah. So let's say controls, cloud bursting, etc. Yeah? Compliance is, we've all spoken about compliance quite a lot today. Yeah? So here is a list of more than 58 compliances which are applicable globally. Microsoft, amongst the public famous cloud service providers, has the most, 58 of them really, and very, very, very comprehensive. It also has India One's Meetai, if you heard of it. It's a good website. I think Pushkar, you mentioned, I guess, that we're not that ahead in terms of it. Yeah, we're not as much, but I think we're starting to do quite a lot of data protection and other details around that as well. Okay, so what challenges, and I think I'll spend a little time here, and the next bell I'll probably pause, right? So what are the challenges, right? So although we've spoken, we've kind of told hybrid, multi-cloud, great, right? It's not simple. I just want to emphasize that, right? It is super complex, and it's very difficult to manage. Yeah? So with all the architecture that we saw, right? Multiple application layers, multiple things. Just Microsoft alone has more than 200 different services. Yeah, and for me as a head of IT, when I'm looking at what services my teams are using, it is super difficult for me to even track against one single thing itself. Right? I do have subscription, I do have monitoring now in place. However, it becomes super difficult to understand which of my functional units are leveraging which of these services and to what extent. Yeah? And when I'm looking at cost, right, and I'm looking at, okay, is it Lambda that is taking more cost? Is it serverless as a function that is taking additional cost? Is it, whatever? It becomes super difficult, right? And a lot of them could be the high cost might be just because we're not doing it right. Yeah? And not because we are leveraging quite a lot of services. It is probably just because we're not doing it right. Yeah? So it is super complex. multi-cloud. Yeah. Managing assets, I think we had a great session already, so I'll not cover that. Yeah. Ability to integrate, interoperability. Yeah. So I'll take an example of utilizing Azure, for example. So one of the patterns, architecture patterns that we had leveraged was hosting our website in a blob. Yeah, hosting our website in a blob, so that we don't have to have a app server per se, or a container actually. Right? So because that is a lot more cheaper. Yeah. However, if you have to implement a JSON or your JavaScript file, it did not support it basically. Yeah. With the same thing, you take that on, you put it on an EC2 instance, it works basically. Yeah. So not all the clouds are the same, and hence it is very different, right? And it's difficult to integrate. Talent scarcity, and I'll end with that, right? Although we think cloud is, I mean, I've already told, right? All clouds are different. Although the principle is the same, it is super difficult to get talent. Yeah, and hence multi-cloud and hybrid cloud are super difficult. But there is quite a lot of work that is happening these days, and good amount of content. I think we have to primarily invest in our folks, right? Invest in our people to try and encourage them to get certified. Kunal suggested a way, we've done that as well. So work with Microsoft and others to kind of train our people, but I think that has to be done more and more within our GCC, so that we could get really smart people to help us out with it. I'll stop here. Thank you, guys.